3 games into the season, and Sheldon Keefe is shaking things up after only basically Austin Matthews and William Nylander have come out to a hot start, and the rest of this lineup has kind of struggled. Breaking down the lineup changes, what they mean, and what we might see going forward. Welcome back to Third Man In. I'm Zack Phillips, and today in this video, we're going to be breaking down mainly the promotion of Matthew Knies up to the second line, why this was done, what this means, what we might see, and kind of some other pieces involved in this one, including the demotion, technically, of Max Domi here down to that third line. But I did predict this kind of in the other day in the live stream, so I mean, this is something if you're interested in hearing about some of these thoughts immediately after games and maybe hearing these predictions before they start to play out on the ice, make sure to subscribe here to this channel, turn on notifications, and while you're at it, I mean, you might as well like this video, show some support here to the channel. But we talked about in the live stream after the game against Chicago that I was feeling like there might be an opportunity here to start to make some changes to kind of balance things out a little bit better. I mean, you see through the first 3 games, Bertuzzi, Matthews, Marner, I stand by the fact that that could be one of the best lines, if not the best line in the NHL by the end of this season. But after that, we saw some interesting combinations of people from Sheldon Keefe through the first couple of games that never really truly jumped off the page as being, hey, this is an uber successful line here that's going to push this team over the top. And I mean, you start with Domi, Tavares, Nylander, then it shakes up and it goes to Järnkrok, Tavares, Nylander, which ultimately changes around the third line to be some combination of the kids with Domi or the combination of the kids with Järnkrok. And I don't necessarily know that you get the best out of everybody doing that. Matthew Knies, when he joined this Leafs team last year out of college into the final couple games of the regular season and then into the playoffs, was a very, very effective player playing in the top 6, whether that was alongside Austin Matthews or if that was alongside John Tavares and William Nylander. He kind of made his presence felt and seemed to excel alongside other top-end talent. He starts this season down with Fraser, Minten, Calle Järnkrok, Max Domi, a combination of those guys. And this isn't to take away anything from Fraser Minten. He's just 19 years old. And he doesn't have the same experience as even a Matthew Knies does, who played against older, more grown men in university and then got an opportunity to jump in a playoff atmosphere with the Maple Leafs last season. Regardless of how few games you might look at that as, that is a big confidence and just kind of overall boost to your ability to play, because you can sit there and say, I have this experience. I have done this. I have played against these guys at this size, at this speed, in a much more competitive atmosphere, being the Stanley Cup playoffs. Now, he drops down to that line with Minten and Järnkrok, and they kind of are just another line on the ice. They're not bad. They're not great. They're just there. They're just good. They're okay. Then you switch it up. Järnkrok goes up, Domi comes down. Yet again, they're kind of just okay. There's nothing really special about that line that's going on. This being said, what you saw out of that second line was continuously William Nylander being the driving factor on that line. And then it was kind of Tavares was playing really well with him, and then the third guy on that line was just another guy who existed. If you put Matthew Knies up onto that second line, he will not be another player who just exists there. Matthew Knies will be a difference maker. He's a guy who's a good playmaker. He can win corner battles. He's physical. He's not afraid. And then from a defensive perspective, he can be a little bit sheltered by having just veterans out there with him. And by no means am I trying to suggest that John Tavares and William Nylander are these defensive savants. They're not, but they are veterans in the NHL. More so than a guy like Fraser Minten is, and probably more defensively responsible than a Max Domi might be. So you're going to get a little bit of help from that side of things where it's like, hey man, you can kind of just do the other things that you're good at and take over from there and just build what you have, build that offensive ability, and you'll learn the defensive game along the way. You'll become more defensively aware and responsible via experience. The other problem with kind of all of this, with him playing down on that third line, through the first 3 games, Matthew Knies has averaged 12 minutes and 12 seconds of time on ice per game. Keefe kind of went on to say, talking about Knies and the shift up to the second line for him, that He thinks Knies has actually played well. He's just kind of lost him a little bit on that third line, and he's got more to offer to this team. Knies' minutes have been too low, and he has a lot more to offer. So in terms of Matthew Knies, you're going to sit here and take away, well, what has he really done through the first couple of games? Well, it's going to be hard because A, he's playing with less experienced and less skilled players on that third line, and B, he's not playing nearly as many minutes as he was last year when we were sitting there looking at this guy going, wow, he's making such an impact. It's not really like his play has dropped off. It's more just who he's with and how much he's actually playing hasn't been there to the extent that it was last year. So there's going to be a natural drop-off. There's going to be that natural decline in his production. I'm really excited to see what this means for Matthew Knies going forward. And not only that is of his personal play, I think that this could push that Nylander line up even more because where you're looking at with Matthews and Marner on that first line, Austin Matthews being incredible through the first 3 games. You look at the first 2, hat tricks in both. You go into the third game, yeah, he didn't score, but he did score that got taken away near at the end of the game with about 6 seconds left, or he had a goal that got taken away by an offside that happened 40 seconds earlier. And then after you look at the shot attempts, 18 shot attempts. That's the second most shot attempts in a single game in Austin Matthews' entire career. The most was against Carolina last year where he had 19 shot attempts. So Matthews, from an offensive standpoint, continuing to dominate, just didn't go in the net in that last game. You put Knies up to that second line with the second best player on this Leafs team through the first 3 games in William Nylander. I think we might see a massive jump in both of their games from a production and a dominance standpoint between Nylander and Knies, and I think that this could also inject some life into JT. Final point on all of that, Matthew Knies living at John Tavares' house. You think it doesn't help build some chemistry living with a guy for an entire season? I think that there's a little bit there to that. You get a little bit of a role model alongside you, a guy that you're willing to listen to, a guy that can teach you because he is a true NHL veteran. He's one of those guys that you look at and you say, hey, that guy plays and lives the right way. Matthew Knies can sit there and watch him through his daily routine, see how he responds to things and be alongside of that. That's a pretty good guy to sit beside and learn from as you go through the first couple of years of your NHL career. I think that this could be a good spot for him. Now, the second part of all of this is obviously who comes down. Well, Domi was the first piece to come down. You saw him play in the first game on that second line. In the second game, about partway through against Minnesota, he gets demoted down to that third line. Yarncrow cops up into the second line spot. I think for Domi here, I mean, you're going to look at his minutes. They haven't been as high, but part of that is just because of his level of play. And the reason I think that he's getting dropped down more so than, oh, he's not playing well, is more because the actual mistakes that he's making are just more costly. It's not necessarily that he's playing poorly or that he's playing bad or anything like that. It's more just like his ability to possess the puck hasn't been there at the rate that it should be. And when you're playing with a guy like John Tavares and William Nylander, you can't be turning over pucks and losing battles as much as he was. So your minutes are going to start to diminish because you need to be getting the puck onto the best players on your line stick more often than you're putting it onto the opposing team's stick. And that's not what Domi was doing through the first couple of games. There was a little bit of a disconnect there from him, from his offensive game and playing with his own teammates there. So you start to lose minutes. Your responsibility isn't there. You're not going to get the respect from the coach of saying, hey, I can trust you to go out there in these situations, and that next thing you know, you're down onto the third line. So minutes start to drop off. The thing for Max here, I think, is that he's probably gripping his stick a little too tight. I mean, you come here, you're Ty Domi's son. Ty Domi is a Maple Leafs legend. People in the city of Toronto love that guy and are in love with Max for the fact that he came here and joined this Maple Leafs team as a free agent. They're going to give him all the respect in the world, all the time in the world. I remember people looking back at this in the signing in the summer and saying, this could be another David Clarkson. I disagree for a few points. David Clarkson, his dad never played here. So no matter what, people in Toronto are not going to hate Max Domi because hate on Max Domi would just reflect onto Ty Domi, and they will never do that. So that won't happen here in Toronto. So Max, just play your game, man. Stop worrying about that. You're going to be fine. I think that there's some other pieces that are going to follow here. There's 6 games remaining in this season, effectively Fraser Minten season here with this Maple Leafs team before he could be sent down to the WHL. Otherwise, he burns a year of his entry level. I think that he's going to be sent down. And again, this is no knock on Fraser Minten. He's actually played pretty well. He just hasn't really impressed. That third line has kind of just existed. They've just been out on the ice at points in time, and that's about it. There's not really any crazy offensive production, goals being scored by them. They're not really being hemmed in to a point where you're sitting here going, wow, this is a massive problem. We can't let them go out on the ice, but it's just, they just exist. And if you're going to be here and you're going to burn a year of your ELC, you're going to be a player that the coach potentially looks at and says, hey, maybe we have to scratch this guy. It's not worth keeping up. So I think Fraser Minten at some point this year is going to be within his 9 games is going to be sent back to the WHL. They're going to say, hey, go down there, go learn how to be a dominant player at the junior level, and then come back next year. You did everything you could here this year. There's nothing wrong with that. We'll see you next year in camp. You're going to go light up the WHL. That's it. Now, the following piece from this, I think we see Nick Robertson up here with this Maple Leafs team very soon. And I think he's going to go on a line, the third line, with Max Domi at center and Calle Jarnkrok on the right wing. People are going to look at this and say, oh my God, we got away from the Dubas era, and now we're just going to continue to go with small, speed, fast guys. Well, I think that this one might be a little bit different, and here's why. Calle Jarnkrok was up in the top 6 last year when we were looking at those small, speed, skilled, whatever. Max Domi has a little bit more of an edge to him than we've seen before. I think Max Domi is actually a complementary player to what Nick Robertson is or could be at an NHL level. And as well, when I look at Calle Jarnkrok, he's not really a driver of play. Max Domi is a guy who can move the puck from the defensive zone to the offensive zone in transition pretty well and make plays. I think alongside 2 guys who could finish, playing with guys who are higher skilled, is going to be beneficial to both Jarnkrok and Robertson. They're going to be fast. You can create some havoc, maybe hem the other team in their own zone for a little bit. Maybe you're not going to score a ton, but if you can create that chaos to the other team where then you can now send out Matthew's line or Nylander's line, it's going to create problems for the other team. And, I mean, finally on all of this, if Nick Robertson isn't going to play for this Leafs team, you got to trade the guy. You cannot just sit there and leave him in the minors and just let him put up a bunch of points and just do nothing with him. If he's not going to play for this Leafs team, trade him. This goes back almost to the whole free Frankie Corrado thing. If he's going to be here and he's not going to play on this team, get assets back for him. Let him go. Let him go play for some other NHL team and go start his career there. Just don't let him just rot away in the AHL. There's no point to that. So I think he comes up. I think he joins the third line with Domi and Jarnkrok. I think they could be some high flyers that come out after. Just speed all up in your face. Maybe create some chaos. Score a couple of goals. I think that could be the perfect line for those guys. And yeah, they're a little bit smaller, but I don't take Calle Jarnkrok as a guy who's scared. He's not tough, but he's not scared. And we know Max Domi, he's not a tough guy, but he's a bit of a shit disturber. I kind of like that out of him. I think that third line could be fine. And then as far as the fourth line goes, let them do their thing. They got to figure it out defensively, but that's kind of it there. I don't really have anything else to say on that fourth line, but let me know in the comments your thoughts on the lineup moves, your thoughts on Nick Robertson, if you think he should be traded, how you feel Max Domi has performed through the first 3 games, if you think the demotion is justified, as well what you think about the way I want to see this roster built out after the 9 games once Fraser Minten has probably moved on back to the WHL here. I look forward to hearing it all from you guys. In the meantime, please make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single video that comes out here, as well as any of the live streams we do post-game. I see a ton of new subscribers coming in. I greatly appreciate that. So thank you guys all for that. But as always, keep belief.